Coming up next on the Marathon Handbook podcast, I'm joined by my colleagues Alex Cyr and Katelyn Tocci for a little group chat. Katelyn just ran a marathon, her first in many years. She went out to New Hampshire where there was snow at the start line and she ran down a big old mountain. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about how we go about post-race recovery, post-race blues, how we get over it, how we motivate ourselves to pull ourselves up off the mat and start over again. And also we talk about short-term, medium, and long-term goals and goal setting, and we share what some of our personal goals are as well. And then we've got Alex here. Alex is our Lord of the Shoes, and he explains to us this little boomlet that's going on in what's called the super trainer category. There's been recent releases from the likes of Hoka and On, and Alex unpacks for us what these shoes are, what they're good for, whether or not they're worth the considerable cost, as they're quite a bit more expensive than your run-of-the-mill everyday trainer, and whether or not they're actually the Goldilocks of shoes when it comes to training and maybe even racing, or if they're all just marketing hype. All right, I'm joined by Katelyn Tocci and Alex Cyr, and before we get into talking about the super trainer phenomenon in the shoe world and how we go about goal setting after a season wraps, thought it would be a good time to chat about that as the spring running season has come to a close, more or less. And then, of course, how we recover. The reason why I thought these would be good topics to talk about is because Katelyn ran a marathon last weekend. We mentioned it on the podcast last week. Katelyn, you and I chatted a little bit about your prep, your race week prep.
Yep.
So we thought it'd be good to kind of circle back, see how it went. Paint us a picture. How did the White Mountains Marathon, if I get that one correctly, in New Hampshire go? Tell us a story of a marathon.
Yeah, okay, I'll tell you the story. Well, it was, many of you probably haven't heard of it because it was a first edition. It was one of the Revel races. I love a downhill race. I love downhill in general. I think being a trail runner, and this race did have a net downhill. It was point to point. So I was very excited about it because I just love smashing those quads. I do it on a day-to-day basis on the trails anyway. So I was looking forward to running a bit faster and having some fun on those downhills. It was a small race, I think under about 2,000 runners in the marathon. And it's a great race for someone who wants to do like a small town race. North Conway was such a nice town. The fair before the race was really fun. And it was a nice, long, windy downhill road, covered with pine trees on the side, snow up at the top as we made our way down into North Conway. It was chilly. It was about 40 degrees. I wasn't expecting it to be quite so cold. It was forecast for some rain in the morning, but luckily we did miss the rain. But it was a very nice view. I mean, I think coming from trail running, it was very cool that it was a road race, but it was in the White Mountains. I mean, called the White Mountains Marathon, pretty appropriate for me. And we were actually running down a mountain for most of it. Don't let me fool you. There was an uphill and an out and back. We had to run a 3-mile uphill, which was tough after running about 7-8 kilometers or so completely downhill and then going in, or even longer than that, I think it was about 15, and then going into an out and back with a pretty serious hill, but very fun. And I had a really nice time and didn't get too banged up as I thought I was going to, but yeah, it was a great race.
Yeah. So it started with like a big, huge downhill, and I'm like, I don't know about you, Alex, but I'm sort of like picturing the middle of nowhere. You mentioned snow.
Yeah.
It's May. Yeah. I can see that though. New Hampshire, if you're high up there's some mountains there. And it's, after all, it's called the White Mountains Marathon, right? Like, I guess it earned its name.
Should have expected snow.
Yeah. And so do they like drop you off in the middle of nowhere, or is it, you said it's an out and back? You finish where you start, or?
No, it was a point to point about 15 or so, I think it was about 15 or so kilometers down. Don't quote me on that. Then we had to do an out and back. I think kind of like to finish up we had an out and back of about 6 miles, about 3 miles out and 3 miles back. And that was where the hills were. So we got picked up We got on a bus that was super well organized. Like everyone got there. It was very like nice lines, get on the bus, jump in. It was about an hour ride up to the start point. And then they kind of dropped us off up there, like you said, in the middle of nowhere. And then we started running down. And we finished in North Conway.
You're probably dealing with a big climate difference from start to finish, right? Like, how do you dress for that?
Yeah, I did plan accordingly. And I wore, the sweats over everything. And, as most races do, whatever you take off before the race, they'll donate it. So I brought, sweats, sweatpants, and they also gave you blankets, those blankets to put on before the race to kind of keep warm, because it was a cold start as we were standing around waiting to go. Have to say, I had arm warmers on, and I did pull them down pretty soon after starting. The gloves I didn't take off the whole race, and the ear warmers, the ear band, I didn't take off the whole race, but I was in, short sleeves, arm bands, and then I just, at the sleeves, and then I just kind of pulled the sleeves down as I got a little warmer. I can't say that it got too warm. I didn't feel too warm at any point to take off gloves or anything like that. But I think comfortable. Like, it was nice running a cooler race. As I train, live in Costa Rica, and we're always running in the heat. It felt like such a relief to run in the cold. So I actually enjoyed the temperature and not feeling like I was just, dehydrated right away, sweating like crazy, dealing with the sun. So it actually felt really nice that it was around like 40 degrees to start.
You guys ever go to the start of a race and you have the throwaways that you've selected, or you've like gone to some sort of like the Goodwill or whatever to pick up some really cheap throwaways, and then you kind of fall in love with that clothing as you're going to the race and you don't want to get rid of it? Have you ever gone to, because this happened to me in Chicago a couple of years ago. I bought this like baggy Chicago. It said Chicago in like cursive on the sweater. It was the cheapest sweater I could find the night before the race because it was kind of cold outside. And then like I got to the start line, I'm wearing the sweater, and I'm like, the sweater's kind of awesome. Like, is there any way I could like toss or hide this sweater so I could come back and find it at the end of the race? It didn't happen. I just tossed it in the donation pile, but like my heart sort of broke a little bit when I tossed away.
Yeah, I'm kind of a hoarder of old running gear. I had this one shirt, and I mean, keep in mind I'm 28, so something that dates from 2015 is like half of my life at this point. And I had this long sleeve that was a all-star team, the first all-star team I made as a university cross-country runner. And I wasn't thinking, it's just a black shirt and long sleeve. I brought it to this race in 2019. And at the start line, I realized what I have to throw away. And I panicked because I don't want to get rid of it. And also it's hot, so I don't want to race in it. So I took it and I tossed it in the woods, like as far as I could, and came back to see if it was there. And luckily it's still there. So I still have it.
We're like totally going off base here, but a training partner of mine missed the baggage check in the Philadelphia Marathon one year and had like head to toe new Lululemon stuff he was wearing to the start. I don't know what he was thinking. And he took it all off, neatly folded it, put it under a tree in the sort of start finishing area, and then got in the race, ran the race, came back at the very end of the race. It was still there, nicely, neatly folded.
Wait,
just picked it up, put it back on.
Michael,
Amazing.
aren't you the one who threw away a Boston Marathon jacket? Pre-race?
I'm just gonna get killed for this one. I didn't throw away a Boston Marathon jacket. You. I gave it to my now wife, then girlfriend, to wear as a throwaway in Boston, which it's kind of like the ultimate flex / dick move. You've got like a Boston Marathon jacket on and you go to the start of a race and you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to take this off and chuck it away. It was the 2011 one, I think, black and green, not a particularly nice looking jacket. And I never wore it. I wore it to walk the dog occasionally, and that was it. And so, you're like, when you're culling this like increasingly growing amount of running gear that you own over the years, especially stuff from races, you start looking at some of it and you're just like, I know I'm never going to wear that race shirt. And in this case, like, it was the Boston Marathon jacket. I'm like, I feel weird wearing this in a race. In a run. I don't wear it in a run. I found it too warm to wear running, and for the most part. and kind of weird and garish. So I never really wore it. So I was just like, I don't know. It was like a nice gesture at the time. And now I recognize a lot of people are going to be like, I cannot believe you got rid of a Boston Marathon jacket, but I did. So that's that. So let's.
No, I can relate to you though, Michael, because I think I'm the opposite of Alex. What happens to me, instead of being a hoarder, I actually get rid of almost everything.
Yeah.
And then I regret it. And I always regret it. Medals, trophies, I don't know, race shirts. I still do have my Boston Marathon jacket when I was young and just kind of ran it out of nowhere when I was like, yeah, exactly. I do have that, but I have gotten rid of a lot of stuff and I regret it deeply. So I wish I had been more like Alex and kept a bunch of my stuff, but oh well.
So Katelyn, back to your marathon.
Sorry, circling back.
You've done a very good job at sort of at letting us avoid chatting about it. But
Thanks.
so how did it go in the end? Are you happy with the result? I know it had been a long time. How many years had it been since you've run a road marathon?
4 or 5 years. Yeah.
So it'd been a while.
Yeah, I've been really just focused on trail for all of this time, and about 4 or 5 years ago, decided to do a marathon cycle, to get faster. And I wanted to do another one, and some friends from our trail running club also wanted to try to qualify for Boston, which they all did. Who ran,
nice.
Who had that plan, which was
Wow.
awesome. So hopefully we can all go next year. We'll be ready with open arms in September, like ready to sign up. But it went well. I want to be positive about it because I know that on the first podcast I did say that I was training very hard for a 3:06,
Mm-hmm.
and I was training super hard, and I felt like I was hitting paces for the most part, but it did feel like a little harder than it should throughout my training, like on the long runs trying to hit that pace. And the day of the race, I can't say, oh no, this didn't go well and this didn't go well. I think it went really well. I ended up doing 3:12, which for me was still a PR, so I was super happy with it because my previous one had been 3:20. So I feel like I shaved a bunch of time off, and I feel like I can shave a lot more time off. I'm not one to give excuses. I actually think that my head got to me. There was just this tiny little glitch, and I know runners don't like to talk about it, but it's a really, really big part of running, and maybe people will relate with me. But even though I got to the start line the hour before, and the rest of the organization of the race was super good, I was in line to use the restroom an hour before the gun went off to start the race, and 55 minutes still waiting in line, and I didn't get to use the restroom. Yeah.
Ooh.
You guys understand me, right? So I was like, oh God, what do I do? So I think my head completely messed with me, and I was really worried about it. So anyway, so I just said, no, I'm going to start out. I'm going to be super positive. Nothing's going to happen. If so, there are stops along the way. I'll just kind of figure it out. But I think I kind of psyched myself out. And it's crazy how much your mind can just mess with you, because I felt really great during the race and gave it my all. So I just hope that next time I'm just going to keep on working hard and try to keep shaving down the time. But I was happy. I mean, PR, so I should be super psyched.
I mean, I don't mean to get too TMI here, but so you didn't have to make a pit stop? You were good?
I didn't. I didn't. And that's why I think that my head was kind of messing with me, because I thought, do I? No. Yes. No. And when you have to make a pit stop. So I think I was kind of it was in the back of my mind, it might come up, and maybe that messed with me a little bit. But to be honest, physically, I did feel really, really good. And I can't say that anything other than just, I don't know, I tried my best and I just couldn't get the time. But yeah. So, but anyways, that was the only tiny little glitch in my day. And if that's it, well, it's not bad. But I feel like, that kind of situation sometimes can make or break a race for someone, but it's okay.
I feel like there's only one thing that I have to check off the list before I get to the start line on race morning, and that is using the bathroom.
I know.
It's I don't know if I've ever run a goal race without a porta potty stop beforehand. Not to get too sharing too much here, but I'm impressed. I'm deeply impressed by that. It's
It's all part of it.
a no pre-race bathroom break PR for you, and also a PR.
Yeah, this is not what I was thinking was going to be my podcast topic. It's not so glamorous, but it's very real. And I feel like almost every runner out there is like, oh yeah, I don't talk about that either. But
Everyone listening or watching right now is just like nodding along, or just like in horror, like, wait a minute. Katelyn ran an entire marathon without using the bathroom first. It's like, this is incredible stuff. Yeah. So, I get nervous before a long run if it doesn't like pan out, right?
I plan my bathroom breaks mid-long run. Note to the race organizers, though, like, you need a certain amount of porta potties per participant. I'm sorry. That's...
Yeah. You're failing at organizing if a big chunk of your field is not able to use the bathroom first.
I felt bad for everyone. There were so many people waiting. And the thing is, I also feel bummed. I didn't really even want to mention it because the race and other aspects, it was so well organized, and, the aid stations and the buses and the transportation and everything was great. And I just feel like, that's probably one take. And they obviously saw it because everyone like rushing off to the start line before and, and still in line. But I think it's a minor thing that they can fix so easily for next year. It's like a really, really easy fix. And it's not like I would recommend the race, especially for people who like downhill races, because it was super fun and fast, and the weather was great. But just minor little glitch that I feel like, I probably would have done a little better, but that's okay.
Well, congratulations. I mean, still a great performance. Never ever be disappointed with a PR. I think is kind of one of the golden rules of running.
Totally.
Yeah, like, don't be greedy. There's always going to be the next one. Oh, I mean, we can get into this when we talk about super trainers and shoes and gear at the end of the pod, but just one set. This is your first race running in super shoes, right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about that at the end, because I'm curious to hear what your feedback on that.
Okay.
All right, so before we jump into the next topic, which is, the perfect segue from what Katelyn was just chatting about, which is recovery, how we approach that, how we go about it. We can unpack our own little tips and tricks on how to do that. But before we do that, we got to do the running quiz, the second iteration of the running quiz. Katelyn's favorite aspect of the podcast. All right. And this week, both of you are going to be subjected to one random skill testing question about anything that's tangentially related to running in any degree. And you will win no prize apart from bragging rights between the three of us on Slack for the next 7 days. What we're going to do is I'll ask the question, and we'll revisit it and get to the answer later on in the pod. So, our colleague, our teammate, Jesse Carveth, our senior news editor, did a fabulous interview with noted, how we would describe Alexi Pappas. She's a Renaissance woman. She's an Olympian. She's a marathon runner. She's an artist. She's a writer, poet. I guess that's also a writer, and a filmmaker as well. And Alexi Pappas told our Jesse Carveth in an interview that is forthcoming on our site in the next probably day or two. Great feature profile that Jesse wrote on Alexi. She told Jesse that she has written and is directing another upcoming feature film that includes a colorful cast. And in that cast is Haley Joe Osment. You may remember him from The Sixth Sense, the little kid, I See Dead People.
Okay.
Yeah, he's all grown up now, and he's in her film. And also, and this is the quiz question, it also features this iconic New York City rapper / producer. So which rapper / hip hop producer is co-starring in runner Alexi Pappas's upcoming feature-length?
Do we give our
film?
answers? Okay.
No, hold your answer for the end, but let that roll
Alex,
around.
I don't
in
think
your
I
head.
know.
You know.
Okay. So I gave you a little hint there. Iconic. So it's a he. He's been around for a while. From New York. So if you know a little bit about hip hop, you can maybe triangulate who we're talking about here.
Wow.
Or at least the group, the the collective, the ensemble of rappers that are synonymous with New York City hip hop of a certain era. All right, and that's it.
Okay.
And this person has also acted, and that's, I'm going to stop with the clues.
Okay.
We'll revisit the quiz, and you will get your answer towards the end of the pod. All right, we're going to take a break, and coming up, we're going to chat post-race recovery. This episode is brought to you by marathonhandbook.com, where we have got a lot going on right now on the site, on our channels. Our news editor, Jessie Carveth, is banging out the hits multiple times a day on the site. She's got this piece up right now on the runner Sifan Hassan, who could conceivably run the 1,500, the 5,000, the 10,000, and the marathon at the Paris Olympics this summer. The word unprecedented has been pretty abused in the last few years, but I would say in a sports context, that is unprecedented. Jessie has a good time looking at what the schedule would look like for Hassan and whether or not she can even pull it off. So make sure you check that out. Our newsletter, if you don't subscribe already, absolutely, it's a must-have in your inbox 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Different stuff every single send, curated by our staff. We put a lot of effort into it. The Friday one's a special one. Our godfather, our Professor Emeritus, Amby Burfoot, 1967 Boston Marathon champ, former editor-in-chief of Runner's World magazine, and one of the icons of the marathon of distance running. He does this really special newsletter, Run Long, Run Healthy, which is excellent. It's just jammed with great stuff every single week. I love editing it. I love reading it. And I know you will too. If you don't subscribe to our podcast, obviously subscribe and give it a 5-star rating. That would really help us a lot. We'd really appreciate it. It's a fledgling pod, and we're trying to grow it. Things have been pretty great thus far. The feedback's been excellent. That 5-star review would be amazing. You can get it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we also put out a video version of the podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, search Marathon Handbook. We're right there. We're putting out video versions of the pod. We're doing little like breakout clips, so you can just watch individual clips of individual segments if that's the way you want to do it. And also, I didn't know this, but you can actually like listen to the video of the podcast on YouTube Music as well, which is pretty handy. And watch Alex Cyr's video shoe reviews. Even if you're not someone who typically watches like gear reviews, the way he does them, they're so good. They're like little stories. They're little entertainments in and of themselves. They're quite funny. They're pretty charming. And he's also putting out reels, YouTube shorts on a weekly basis. He's off to California right now, where he's got something special planned for our Instagram for a reel or two. So stay tuned for that. All right, and we're back. And our next topic, we're going to chat a little bit about how we go about dealing with post-race recovery, how much time we take off, when we start thinking about running again, how we ease back into it, that sort of thing. I think everyone is different. I think everyone kind of does their own thing, and it takes a couple of years for you to kind of figure out your groove with it as well. I'm curious, you're both seasoned veterans of the running wars, so I'm curious to hear how you guys both go about it. So, Katelyn, you just finished a marathon, so like how many days recovery are you into it, and like what's your approach? Have you gone for a run yet? Like, I know you're an ultra runner too, so I don't know if you approach things differently, but
yeah. And I was going to mention that because I don't want it to seem like I'm not recovering properly, or a lot of people probably disagree with my recovery, but I feel like as an ultra runner, we're a little crazier. Obviously, I feel great. I would never run without being like uncomfortable or having a pain or anything like that. I did try to stay active the couple of days after the race. I didn't have access. I was traveling, visiting my family in Boston. I didn't have access to any like cross training machines. So I did, walk Tried to stay active walking for a couple days, and then maybe on the third day, and there were some great trails where I was staying, really awesome trails, soft, nice trails. So I did like some walking the first couple of days, running, and then I did end up going for a jog. But really after about 30 minutes, I was, just done. I just kind of wanted to get moving, see how I was feeling. And I haven't run more than 35, 40 minutes, I think, since then, like every other day, taking a couple of days off just to kind of see how I'm doing, and I'm feeling really good. But of course I'm still fatigued, and so I'm just going to take it really easy. I usually take about 3 weeks of easy, running before I get back into training again.
Yeah, Alex, so you torched a 10K a couple of weeks ago. I know you're like a little banged up right now. I don't want to poke a wound right here, but you're climbing the walls, I'm sure. But yeah, what's your usual strategy? I mean, I know you're more of you've been focusing more on the 10K this season. What's the Alex Cyr designed approach for segueing from ripping your legs apart in a really hard race back to kind of getting into training again?
Well, everything does change when you're hurt, so I'll put that aside. But I do have a method, and it came from having the worst possible method in college and then iterating and fixing on that for the following 5 years. When I was 21, we had cross-country season in college, indoor season in January, February, March, and then outdoor track. That's kind of the holy trinity of college running, which leads to 3 off periods. What I used to do, and my teammates as well, is take 2 weeks to not run, not think about running, not do anything, partying on the weekends, and come back 2 weeks later feeling terribly because not only were we not running, but we weren't moving. So
right.
My method changed a lot because a human body's meant to move. It's not good to keep running past your goal race. You need a break, but move during that break. So Katelyn, you mentioned that, right? You go for walks on those day offs. Now I have a 4-day off period. Doesn't sound long, but that's the first step. During those 4 days, I just move. I go for walks. I stand on my feet a lot. I eat a lot of food, drink a lot of water, try to get a lot of sleep, but I just don't stay stagnant too long. You don't spend 4 days watching movies. After those 4 days, I go into that second phase where I'll throw together a 20-minute run, a 30-minute run. That second phase can last anywhere from 2 to 3 days to another full week. And I know when to get out of it when those 30-minute runs don't feel like enough anymore. I want to do more. To me, a regular season run would be somewhere around an hour, 70 minutes. As soon as I get the itch to do that, then I'll throw myself into a run. Of course, you got to be healthy throughout the entire thing. But yeah, I guess that's what it is. It's just don't stop moving, but don't push the running.
Yeah, I don't know when I adopted my approach, but it's been a long time. It's probably more than 10 years now. And I've been living in this it's like I'm a prisoner to the marathon. I've been living in this perpetual series of annual marathon cycles of like a spring fall cycle since for the better part of 15 years now. Okay. So I started running marathons my very first marathon was the spring of 2010. So 14 years. I've taken a bunch of seasons off. I mean, I took last fall off as well. So I've missed a whole bunch of marathon cycles, but I've run quite a few marathons in that time. And at some point very early on, I decided that, and this is kind of a classic approach, that I would take after a marathon, I would not run for an entire 7-day stretch after the marathon. So you finish the marathon typically like if it's a Sunday race, which most of them are, you finish on the Sunday. I don't run for that entire following week, period, at all. And then I can go out the following Monday, so day 8 after the marathon. And for that week, my approach is I run when I feel like it for the entire week. There's no structure to it. If I want to run on Monday, I can run on Monday. But if I don't want to run, I don't have to, which can be dangerous because then you're like, okay, I don't feel like running. And then you can go the entire week without running, which I have done. And that just means you need more of a mental and physical break, right? And different marathons kind of bang you up differently. The advent of the super shoe has definitely changed how damaged my legs feel in the aftermath of a race as well, which has been interesting. But yeah, typically like the Monday after that week completely off, I'll like I'll probably run for 15 or 20 minutes total, and I'll walk for a few minutes in between here and there whenever I feel like it, just to kind of like get the legs flowing again. But I'm not super structured about it, and I'm not structured for that week. And really like for about a 30-day period after the marathon, I just kind of take it easy, and there's no structure to my running. There's no workout. There's no, I got to hit this much mileage. There's no, oh, I got to get back into some sort of long run on the Sunday again. There's none of that for a month. Because when you think about it, marathon training is, particularly if you've got some experience running the marathon, you kind of need like 14 to 16 weeks to kind of build out a full training cycle. And if you're doing that spring and fall, that's a big mental ask over the course of a year, and you do need some time off in between each. So I think it's good to sort of like lock in a month afterwards where you just kind of don't worry about structured running at all, if that makes any sense.
And there's so much time between your peaks. I mean, for me, it's a little bit different. If I'm focusing more on 5Ks, 10Ks, I'll likely try to be in top form every 3 months or so. If your peaks are 6 months in the middle, or there's 6 months between your two peaks, it's fine to take a full month to really get your head back into it, right? Though another thing I'll say for recovery, whether it's the marathon, the 5K, the 10K, I think it's important not to get caught up in the numbers. It's not just about getting back to 30 miles a week, 40 miles a week the next week. There's more to recovery than building up slowly in miles. Sleep is huge. I once had a build up where I was nailing my numbers, right? Going up 10 kilometers a week or 10 miles a week, but my sleep was off. I was working a lot. My schedule was irregular, and I felt like that prevented me from recovering well from the last peak because I wasn't actually getting my 8 hours in. So it's more than numbers to me. Sleep, food, just the classic things. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just a bit of regularity.
You need to have like a toddler in the mix to challenge that.
To harden.
See how you do with like,
maybe that just hardens you. I'm soft and 28.
No, I don't think it hardens you. I think it just breaks you. It just turns you into somebody who's like given up a little bit. I don't know. Just like let go of like these super like ambitious A goals, and you're like, you know what, the B goal sounds pretty good. I think you just touched upon something that's really important, which is not to get super numbers focused, and that's really challenging. I think for a lot of runners. I think most of us are. I'm about the least A-type of runners, but I still do have A-type tendencies. I still do find myself motivated by benchmarks, times, hitting certain standards. I think for the most part, it's not entirely a bad thing to create that structure and to have those numbers and those goals to motivate you. But if you start thinking to yourself like, oh, it's been 7 days since I ran the marathon, I need to hit 50 kilometers or, however many miles again to get back to where I was before. You start doing math equations. I think that's really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you have to fight against that. Injury. Yes. And you have to fight against that actively every day, especially now. We're in the era of metrics, right? Everyone's on Strava. The more miles you do, the more kudos you get. Maybe it's not Strava that motivates you. Maybe it's closing your rings. If it's not closing your rings, it's getting your sleep score. There's so much feedback around you as a runner and just as a person that you can't turn it off. It's like every day you need a reminder that at the end, it's the training that matters, and it's not the metric or the bio score that reflects it,
I think the saving grace with the rings, Alex, you just like, you said close the rings, and I had this like
because you're a ring guy.
Pavlovian response. I was like, where are my rings at right now? As an Apple Watch wearer. But the one nice feature of the Apple Watch, and thanks be to the good people at Apple, that the bar is not terribly high to close the exercise ring. It's walking counts, which is, hey, it is exercise, and that's great. And the world contains multitudes, right? So that's a great You just go out and get your walk in. Just go do your 30-minute walk.
Do your
and,
steps.
get your steps in. And that's good for you. And that's good for your legs too, right?
If your watch tells you to stand, I hate it when they do that. When your watch tells you, hey, stand up. You haven't stood for a while. That's when you know.
I know, it's like,
go for a walk.
it's like you should be ashamed of yourself. You've not stood for the last 50 minutes. You have 10 minutes left to stand for 2 minutes.
I see you
I
eating
love it when
fuzzy
my
peaches.
Garmin will say, I love it when the Garmin's like, oh, nice restful recovery. Your recovery's up. And I'm like, I ran a 2.5-hour long run this morning. Why is my recovery up? Like, it upsets me. Or
Oh, you think it like your Garmin is like trolling you? Is like, yeah.
I'm like, wait, I ran a long run today. What do you mean nice recovery? I haven't recovered at all. Or the overtraining, the overreaching. That one makes me even more upset. I actually shut those notifications off because I just couldn't take it anymore.
You're like, I am not overreaching.
Yeah. Who are you to tell me? Yeah, exactly.
Man.
I don't want to fight anymore with the Garmin.
I actually just this morning had this notification on my watch that made me realize that maybe if my watch were like super evolved, self-aware AI, it would be it's judging me, which is my watch congratulated me on sleeping 8 hours for once. It was like basically like, hey, it was like this weird notification you only get when you do something like very rarely and you actually do it right. It was like, congratulations, you actually slept for 8 hours. This is
new
good.
for you.
This is a good turn of events.
Keep it
It's
up.
like, God. Okay, I had a problem here.
I have a fight with my watch, and it's I also have the Apple Watch, the same one as you, Michael, and it will detect when I'm quote unquote working out, even if I don't start my workout. So for example, if I were to start running to catch a bus and I get winded, my watch will send me a notification saying, are you working out? Press yes if so, and we'll start the meter. Now that I've been injured for a week, my morning walks register as workouts. And it's upsetting me so much because it's not a workout. And it means that my heart rate's going up because I'm walking around the block. And I have my pods and I'm listening to a podcast. The podcast stops and it's my watch going, are you working out? Do you want to start? I'm thinking, no, I'm not working out. Anyway, there's no worse way of knowing that you're getting less fit than your watch telling you that you're working out when you're just walking past the driveway.
Got one question for you, Alex. Do you hit yes when it asks you, or do you hit no?
Absolutely not.
Do you? Oh, you don't? I do. I totally do.
No.
I'm like, yeah, I'll take that as exercise.
No.
Hell yeah.
No, it doesn't count.
I'll take that 1 kilometer walk I just did as 10 minutes of exercise. Absolutely, man.
Nah, it's a
Oh,
free
yeah.
lunch.
Close the rings. Come on.
There is no free lunch.
Okay. Well, you just shamed me there. I definitely hit click yes all the time. It is sort of like, so yeah, Caitlin, you're a Garmin wearer.
Yeah.
Alex
don't
and
know
I
the
both
Apple
have
Watch.
these like Apple Watch Ultra watches, and the exercise module, the app for running or exercise, it's got all these different, it's got, running, walking, cycling, whatever, and it bumps up the exercise you do most frequently. It automatically puts to the top of the pile. So when you engage the app, it will show you the top exercise that you've done. And, usually if you're running every day, it will be running, but it's always like a little bit of, a stark realization when you see the walk
up.
exercise is the top one on your app. You're like, okay, I'm not running enough right now. Yeah. All right, let's take a break and we're going to come back and we'll chat a little bit about goal setting, because it's sort of like moving away from this the recovery piece, as the kids say, and we can get into talking about how it is you kind of shake those post-marathon or post-race blues and kind of like look past it and create structure. And I'm curious to hear how both of you go about doing that. All right, we'll be right back. All right, and we're back, and I figured we'd wrap up this kind of mega segment here on post-race recovery and the long and winding road after the goal season ends, and chat a little bit about how we look down the road to the future and how we set medium, mid, and long-term goals to keep us motivated, to keep the fire burning, and also like to like maybe not to get too carried away either. But so like Alex, like you're in an interesting spot right now because you're banged up. You came very close to your ultimate goal in the 10K. You're sort of like your big personal obsession, but you're like not quite there. I guess that's a good spot for you to kind of like keep yourself focused because you've got like the added challenge of not wrecking yourself and trying to like cross train and not lose fitness. Like, yeah, how are you structuring like the next, I don't know, couple of months to keep yourself going?
It depends how quickly I can recover. It's always that for me. And also for a lot of people, I remember seeing some stats about when people get injured, and it's usually right at the end of a season or while building up again because you're off your routine either way. At the end of a season, you're peaking hard. At the start of a season, you might not be used to running all that much yet. Hence the reason I only take those 4 days to be completely off. How I recover and how I plan for the next season, it's tough. I usually block out a time, right? 12 to 16 weeks. That's the season that's upcoming. And I try to plan a race in the middle of that. If the end is a 10K, I'll try to run a 5K or an 8K race, perhaps in the middle. But for now, I got to wait until I'm healthy to get the season started again. I don't like setting goals too far into the future because I find it gets me to peak a little bit too quickly. So for example, right now we're in May. It would be a strange time to start a season, but also I wouldn't want my goal race to be in, say, November and train for 6-7 months leading up to that because that's too long. I try to hit a goal race in 3 to 4 months. Again, for me, it's 5Ks, 10Ks. So it takes less long to build than for a marathon. I think there's also a lot of value in knowing how quickly you can get into shape. And you tend to figure that out after a few years or a few seasons, whether you've succeeded in the seasons or failed. You realize it might take you 8 weeks to get into a reasonable racing shape and 12 total weeks to peak. Now I can take that into consideration when I'm picking a goal race. But at this point in my life, I'm picking goal races that are in interesting locations or in interesting events, and B, that are fast. My priority is fast. So yeah, it limits me a little bit. Usually my races are in Canada or East United States, but yeah, it's about speed more so.
Katelyn, you're at a tricky spot because you just finished a marathon, you tore your legs apart a little bit, but you're not injured, so you're okay.
Yeah.
How are you planting the flag in the next thing that you do?
Yeah, I do like planning as far in advance as I can to kind of keep me thinking what's coming up. I usually run about 3 races a year. I don't go crazy and like do a whole season of a bunch of racing as I feel like a lot of trail runners and ultra runners do, especially because here in Costa Rica, we're really lucky because we can train and race all year round because the weather is always the same. You know, aside from a little rain here and there in a couple of months, but we have trail races all year long. So it makes it kind of nice when I think it can be a positive and a negative. It's really nice when you're trying to choose a race because if you don't want to travel for a race and you have a ton of races here every month, there's always going to be a race here that you can choose from. But also it can be a bit of a negative because I feel like people might not recover because we don't have like a recovery season. We're just constantly training because we can constantly race. So I try and tell my athletes as well, like you need at least a few months, like Alex was saying, 16 weeks, 14 weeks, like before, in between each race. So there's a race that I always run here in August that I love. It's a 60K race. And I'm trying to, it's trail and there are 2 60K races in August that I want to choose between, but the dates are really similar. So I've got to make that decision soon. And then the 50K, which I'm going to run in Kodiak, at the end of the year in October. And actually, you guys are the first ones to hear me say 50K because everyone still thinks my plan was to run 100K. But after the marathon, I said, I want to keep running fast. I want to keep practicing like maybe shorter races and not go into a big, long ultra this year. And continue to work to then maybe do Boston next year if we're accepted after this marathon that I just did. So, anywho, trying to do maybe a 60K in August, and then 50K in October. That's kind of like how the rest of my year looks. All trail, all trail running.
I love the relativity of running, where you're like, I want to keep running fast and shorter distances, and so I'm going to run the 50K. and Alex's brain is melting, and even mine is as well, because I'm like, yeah, like I think of the marathon as like fast-ish at the level I'm running it at, but it's not like
Well, it's not like Alex. No, it's not like Alex.
Well, no,
super fast running.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess fast for me, because I'm like a slow or ultra runner, long distance. So for me, I'm like, wow, at 50K, I can really push and I can really suffer. And I can really, run a lot harder than I would if I'm running 100K and I'm trying to like conserve my energy a bit for all those hours.
So I'm in a situation where I kind of feel a little bit like, a character in a heist movie, where in the opening 10 minutes of the movie, and they're setting the table of like the plot, the crack diamond thief, the safe cracker guy, they approach him and they convince him to do one last big score. And he's like, after this one, I'm done. And you kind of know where this is going. You're like, this is not going to end well for this guy. And I kind of feel a little bit like that character right now, where I'm like, I want one last big score in the marathon, which I hope will be this fall. And I know after, if I do okay, I'll be like, or even if I don't do okay, I'll be like, I want one last big score after the big score. But yeah, in thinking back, I was like, okay, if it's going to be one last big score and I want to run well, I want to I'm motivating myself by, an external motivator, a time goal, which can be dangerous because like your body doesn't understand what time goals are. Your body understands like what you're doing to it and the adaptations that accrue from what you're doing to it. And that also has no bearing on kind of what happens on the day, whether or not it's like, 40 degrees or 85 degrees at the start, right? And the humidity level and all that sort of thing. So you can't control those things, but the things you can control is sort of like what your fitness is at and how much effort and work you put in over the course of a few months, which is motivating in and of itself. But one thing I realized when I was thinking back, I was like, okay, I think one of the things I'm very motivated by right now is trying to do everything the right way. And this is a concept I've been thinking about for, I'd say, probably 6 or 7 years pre-pandemic. I'm thinking about running and thinking about doing a season and not being like a perfectionist about it, but just doing it the right way. If you guys know what I mean, like doing all the strength training, like taking the easy runs easy, doing the stretching regimen that I preach but don't practice. All these sorts of things. There's like the Myrtle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Myrtle. This American coach named Jay Johnson came up with this thing called the Myrtle routine, which is basically like kind of like a hip flexibility and strength routine. It's very easy. It's just body weight and that sort of thing. It takes like 10 or 15 minutes. It's great for warming up and for after your run as well. And I have like like so many other runners, I have like weak glutes, like pathetic little glutes that don't fire ever, and weak hips. So I always have to think to myself, like, I got to work on that. So I've had this idea in my head, this concept of like doing it all the right way and like not cheating myself for one whole season, which I have to admit I've never accomplished in nearly 15 years of running pretty consistently. So that's something that motivates me.
What goes first? What goes first when you find that you fall off? Is it the strengthening? Is it the stretching?
Sleep. Sleep's the first thing that goes. Sleep. I have a tendency to burn the candle at both ends and stay up too late, stay up past my bedtime and not be like a grown up. And so like not sleeping 8 to 8.5 to 9 hours a night, which like, I mean, if you look at the science says you've got to sleep more than 8 hours a night, not 8 hours a night. So
I need it too.
Yeah. So that's the first thing that goes. Then it's the stretching. Then it's the strength. Then it's like little things with diet that you could do better. It's that kind of stuff. I'm actually really good at running. I'm really good at running slowly on my easy days. And I'm really good at running a lot. I'm really good at like doing the work. That's never been an issue. So the other thing I was thinking, okay, so do everything
That's
the
a
right
great
way.
goal. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a goal for me. That's motivating. It's because it's just sort of more like it's like a philosophical. It's kind of an abstract one. I know it's not like I want to run this time in the Chicago Marathon this fall, but I do have that as well, and that will motivate me in time. But for me right now to start off, I'm like I want to start off right, and I want to do it the right way every week, and just check off that box every day of doing it the right way. That's one goal for me, and the other goal is to do something I knew I did well in the past that I'm not doing right now. And that is running through your fitness instead of just not racing. So racing through your fitness. So that's the other goal I have in mind. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop being such a chicken and an egomaniac. Not that I'm a big egomaniac, but like I'm going to, and Alex, you do this a lot. Like you're going to race through the season, right? I mean, it's kind of what you have to do when you're running 5s and 10Ks. You have to race through your season. So, but marathon runners, I'm sure maybe ultra runners are a little bit different, Katelyn, but with the marathon, like I've gone a few years where I just like didn't run any races. I just ran the marathon at the end of the season. I got myself super fit and then I ran the marathon and I did well, but I didn't run like a fitness test 5K 6
Or like
weeks
a half or
before.
anything.
I didn't do a half. I didn't do any of that.
Okay.
I think I might do that, and that will motivate me a little bit. It's like get over yourself a little bit. Don't worry about the time. Just run the race. You might be, 90% there. You might be 85% there. Who cares, right? Like put the time down. You know where you stand. The time is the time. Yeah, like you're not so precious. So that's another thing in a weird, ironic way is motivating me. Is like, okay, let's put some races down this summer on the calendar. It'll motivate me to get out there and run. And I'll sort of like plot a course towards the fall marathon for me. So that's the way I'm going to motivate myself a little bit. A little fear of God, like you register for a few races. That means that you kind of have to you have to do it, right? So yeah,
I'm a big supporter of that.
motivators.
I think that's a good idea. It also takes some jitters out of race day because you are reminded
Yeah.
of how hard a race actually is. I think some of my worst goal races came after not racing for several months because you get there and you can become a little bit overwhelmed with the things that happen on race day, right? You start hurting earlier than usual. There are a lot of people cheering you on. The porta potties aren't working, any of these things. If you do these little prep works before, nothing will phase you on race day.
Yeah. Great idea.
All right, and at that we'll wrap this. So we're gonna take a break, and we'll come back with our quiz answer, and we'll talk super trainers. All right, and we're back. Let's do the running quiz answer. Okay, so at the top, I asked both of you, who is the rapper / hip hop producer of note, a favorite of 16-year-old Michael,
Wait,
who is co-starring in a film that is being written and directed by Olympian and former track star Alexi Pappas. Kind of a weird
give this
one.
to Alex. I have to give it to Alex because I'm really.
well, I was going to say Childish Gambino, but he wasn't alive when Michael was 16. Okay.
Right?
That's right.
He's too new. He's way too new.
So can I change my answer? That's not my answer.
Yeah, of course. I'll let you change.
I
gave you another clue there.
Okay, well, I feel silly saying this because he's such a big name, and kudos to Alexi Pappas if she's landed this guy, but Jay-Z?
Okay. That is incorrect.
Okay.
This is now it's like, does
Now we just go through the list.
Katelyn, are you a hip hop head, or are you just kind of like, Jay-Z was my answer too? And
I'm feeling the same way. I'm like, that's who I would have guessed. So let me just go down the list. Anyone else from New York? I can remember. I mean, yeah, of course. When I was in high school, I listened to a lot of like the '90s hip hop.
Okay, 90s. Yes, I was a 16-year-old in the 1990s.
Yeah, me
okay,
too.
1996. Right.
I don't know. I would just be taking a shot in the dark.
All right.
I don't know.
I'll take you out of your misery here.
Who is it?
The answer is the producer and hip hop artist who is a member of the Wu-Tang Clan, RZA. So RZA kind of like transitioned into this career as this sort of, I think I used the term Renaissance woman to describe Alexi Pappas. So this is actually kind of like a good pairing between her and RZA, because he's also acted in a bunch of movies, pretty good too, from what I can remember. And he's a producer and has released his own albums as well, and is kind of like widely seen as the genius behind the Wu-Tang Clan. Although there is also a member of the Wu-Tang Clan is called Genius. But anyway, the film that Pappas is making is called Not an Artist. I think it was actually, seems like it was actually filmed in 2023, so it must be forthcoming. Anyway, she spoke with our Jessie Carveth about what she's up to now, her life, kind of transitioning from being absolutely obsessed and dialed in with elite running on a daily basis, and how she's sort of, I believe she describes it in the feature, which I got to edit, so I'm familiar with it. She referred to like figuring out her North Star, what's sort of how she allows her life to be directed and guided now, and how she's much more careful about kind of not getting too obsessed with any one thing. So really interesting piece. Should be on the site within the next day or two, so keep an eye out for that. We'll share it in the newsletter as well, because it's worth reading for sure. Okay, so our final topic of the day, we've got the shoe. We've got the RZA of shoe reviewing here with us. The OG Alex Cyr.
High praise.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the whole Super Trainer thing. They've been kicking around for a couple of years, and you've just basically done, was it back to back? Pretty much back to back video reviews. If you haven't checked out Alex's shoe reviews on our YouTube channel, they are must watch programming. They are entertaining whether or not you give. I'm like trying not to
care about the
yeah.
shoes. Let's
Thank
put it that
you.
way. You could just
Thank
not
you,
care
Julie.
about the shoes. And
Trying to
it's still
keep a clean
entertaining.
rating here on the pod, and I'm not good at that. So, yeah, you don't have to care
very
about
fun.
the shoes to enjoy
Yeah.
these. So,
Yeah.
kudos to Mr. Cyr on his on his creative skills with these reviews. But you touched upon the on. Correct me if I get this one wrong. The On Cloud Monster 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
Maybe the stupidest name for a shoe that I can possibly come up with, but I'm curious to hear what you think about the shoe. And then the Hoka
Skyward
X, right, which you would categorize as super trainers, right? So tell us a little bit, like what for those who do not pay attention to what's going on in the world of shoe design and development. What is a super trainer? Why is it not a super shoe? And why is it not a trainer?
I'll try to keep it brief, but there's a little history to that. And we need a better name for super trainer, because that gets conflated with super shoe. Anyway, I'll explain the difference. A few years ago, there were two categories of shoes. There were your regular trainers, so your New Balance 860s, what you'd wear on everyday runs. And then you would have your new flashy super shoes. So think of the Nike Vaporfly and everything that came after that. That left people with a problem. There was nothing in the middle. So it was clear you'd race with those super shoes. You would train with those regular trainers. But what do you do your workouts in? Everyone had a different interpretation. Some people would take their super shoes, wear them for every workout, and then wear them again in the race. Other people would only train in their regular training shoes and break out those super shoes only on race day. Then brands clued in that people needed an intermediary, a workout shoe that had some of the specs of a super shoe, but also had a bit more support and cushioning to take you through the workouts. Thus was the creation of the super trainer. Every brand has a super trainer now. So these are they're middling shoes, essentially. A little bit heftier and heavier than racers, a little bit more springy and poppy than your training shoes. So I'd say now, if someone wants to have a full arsenal of shoes, the way to do it is you get one of the three. You get your training shoes for easy runs. You get a pair of super trainers for workouts and super shoes for races. So the Hoka Skyward X would be a good example, right? They're massive shoes. You wouldn't want to race in them, but also they don't feel like classic training shoes. You could actually do a workout in them, even though they're quite a bit heavy because they have a lot of pop. So that's where we are. There are three bona fide categories of racing shoes. I actually quite like the super trainers. What I do is I do my workouts in them.
Katelyn, do you have super trainers? Do you have like a fleet of shoes that you go through?
I do. I'm not going to lie. I do push the shoe rotation. And I think that's just so I can have a bunch of different pairs of shoes at all times. But I don't. I just have the super shoes that I ran the marathon in. And I broke them in 2 long runs beforehand just so I could see how they felt and how I was going to respond and how my feet would feel in them. And I loved them, but I don't have any super trainers. But this is an interesting hybrid that I think I want to look into and add it in there to the rotation.
Katelyn is on Amazon as we speak, ordering
exactly.
the Cloud Monster 2. I remember when the Nike Pegasus Turbo first came out. If you guys remember that shoe, that was 2017 or 18. It was right after the first wave of the Vaporfly, or the 4%, the very first iteration of the super shoe. About a year into it, they did this thing in the lead up to Tokyo, the Tokyo Olympics that got canceled. So it was probably around 2019. They brought Kipchoge to Tokyo the year beforehand to hype up the relaunch of what effectively is probably like, version 1 of the super trainer, which was this. They took a peg. So they took an everyday trainer. They slid a nylon plate into it, which they also did with the Zoom Fly. Is that the one it's called? They sort of stepped down a non-super shoe, which I guess is also a super trainer. So it was kind of had a stiffness and a snappy responsiveness to it, but it had a sort of more durable chunk of midsole foam in it. So you could get more than a couple hundred miles or more than a couple hundred kilometers out of it. So I've had a couple of pairs of those, and I did find myself using them for the express purpose that they're designed for, which is tempo workouts and that sort of thing, and also the odd long run as well. So, but what do you guys think about running? I mean, Katelyn, you did a couple of tester runs in the super shoe, but I know of people that use a pair of super shoes or a pair of like kind of maybe past prime super shoes to do like long runs or workouts in. What do you guys think about doing that?
I would have liked to use, if I had, an influx of these super shoes and were able to use them all the time, I would like to use them for my workouts because I really like the way they felt. But I just, was saving them for the marathon, and really glad that I did, because they are looking a little tired, even with their, 150 kilometers on them or whatever it is. Like they are looking like, it's pretty much the end of their life at this point. But I would have liked to, or I would like to run more of my workouts, or at least, my fastest maybe speed workout a week in those shoes, because I did feel a great difference, and I love running in them.
Alex, do you think that maybe running in like a plated shoe, is it a good idea to do it a couple of times a week? I don't know.
Well, I think I was the target market for the super trainer industry and market. I love them. I don't work out in regular trainers anymore because I find my strides actually different. If I want to work out in a way that I almost race and be up on my toes and run at a certain pace and get my body used to like a certain type of effort for a certain type of pace, I just don't find workouts in. I always say the New Balance 880s, not because I don't like them. It's because those are the ones that I use for easy runs right now, and I love them for easy runs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I wouldn't work out in them because they don't have the balance of a super shoe. I also don't work out in super shoes, and I think that's more of a superstitious thing on my part. I like this psychological advantage of showing up to race day knowing that I have a pair of shoes that are going to make me a tiny bit faster than I've been in workouts. And I don't know if there's
4%.
much of a physical, yeah, it's a 4% thing. It's probably more psychological than physical. It's also good on the wallet because then I get to save those racing shoes for race day.
Right.
They don't have that long of a lifespan. But twice a week, religiously in the last few years, I've worked out in super trainers.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that for now. I may have to try a pair of these super trainers. I feel like now
I'm gonna try 'em too.
yeah, we're gonna have to bring in some super trainers here and see how they feel. Cause you got me with my stride is different when I'm
Yeah.
running that fast. I'm like, is my stride different? My stride might be different. Maybe I have to get some super trainers. Okay.
It's
You
settled.
just sold us.
Yep, it's
Yeah, you
settled.
did the work. You
Thank
did the
you.
work for On and for Hoka. There you go. All right, that's our show for this week. I'll let you guys plug before we go. Katelyn, what do you got going on this week in life, in running, on the site?
No, just gonna keep recovering. Starting up strength training again this week. That's gonna hurt. After having a few weeks off before and during the race. So my goal this week is kind of just to get back into it, see how I feel, do some strength training, continue to sleep and eat well, hydrate, and get back at it as soon as I can.
And you've got a race in California you got coming up soon.
Yeah, and we're closer to the end of the year, so I've got
I've
got time.
That's
Yeah,
in
it's
fall.
October. It's October. I've got plenty of time
okay.
to train. Yeah.
And Mr. Cyr, speaking of California, you are off to God's country, to the greatest state in America, to California tomorrow.
Tomorrow, off to Palm Springs for 6 days. It's not a running trip, it's a leisure trip, but I hope to use it as a physical recovery and escape from everyday life so that I can heal the hip and also create some content, collect some content. I'm bringing a bunch of cameras, so I don't know. Time to make a reel, a cool reel.
So we should be paying attention to the Marathon Handbook Instagram account for Alex's Palm Springs adventures. I love it. All right, and on our on Marathon Handbook right now, we got a lot going on. It's multiple stories every day. Our aforementioned teammate Jessie has she wrote a couple of bangers already today. So, and we're doing the newsletter 3 times a week. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I think we're at like 162,000 people subscribing now. It just keeps going up every week, which is exciting and daunting. And we're contemplating going 5 days a week for the newsletter and mixing up the content a little bit. I think I'm going to jump in there and write kind of like an editor's note type newsletter once a week. And we'll also be pushing out some gear focused content on the newsletter as well. So they're going to get kind of a little bit curated for everyone's tastes as well. So be sure to subscribe to the newsletter. You can subscribe to that on our site, marathonhandbook.com, and watch Alex Cyr's YouTube videos.
Yes.
His reviews. They're lovely. They're amazing. They're entertaining. They're a definite must watch. And you can watch our podcast. If you are listening to this podcast right now, thank you for listening. You can also watch it on YouTube. Every single episode, we're going to post a video version. You can look at our beautiful mugs on YouTube every single episode. And thanks so much for listening.